Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us Dr. Buck here, Buck Melton, who I think the audience is well aware of his virtues.
Hello again.
And I can record a few, but one thing that I know that you're famous for, Buck, is your quick wit and your ability to drop an occasional pearl.
My
Wit, and then dropping a pearl in front of our audience. Do you have
I have quick wit?
Yes. Do you have? That's right. I know you might not be the right time to bring this up, but maybe you could drop a pearl of wisdom in front of our audience. Would you care to do that?
You think I have quick?
Right.
Wits?
Well,
I do. Actually, I do.
Move past that.
I do have a pearl. So,
all right. What pearl?
Which I think is kind of apropos based on the current sad state of things today. To split the simple atom, all mankind was intent. Now any day, the atom may return the compliment. It may have been E. Cummings, I'm not sure, but
oh, really?
Yeah. So I stole it from someone. So.
Well, no, that's quite good. That's quite good. Well, as we go forward in the world here, right now we're in the political season has started in our country. And actually, I think the first voting is going to take place in September. Is that right? It's really, and by the time the actual election occurs, it's November. So really, things are moving along pretty quickly. And right now, I think together, we've made remarks about the quality of both candidates, and the country would be better served possibly with another slate on each party. But having said that, one of the things that appears to be going on now is with former President Trump is facing a number of political trials. Well, that's the wrong word. Criminal accusations.
Well, certainly political trials is a more all-encompassing phrase.
Now,
but,
we've sort of been there before on this, but the power of a district attorney anywhere in the country to actually decide to bring charges, yes or no, against anyone. And the limitations that might be imposed in doing that. There's so much freedom on the part of a district attorney to prosecute people. The role of the grand jury is often discussed as well. We can't just do it. We have to send the case through a grand jury, but that's the famous story is could die at a ham sandwich or whatever.
Yes.
Well, should we have a different arrangement about the power of district attorneys to bring cases and charges against people, or any thoughts on that, or is the situation acceptable?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know how long we have to unpack this.
Right.
I mean, I go back once again to the famous phrase popularized by John Adams and others, a government of laws and not of men. But how can you really make that come true? Now, I know what you're getting at, because the last time I checked, there were something like, I believe, 3,000 federal, or maybe 300, just an incredible number of federal regulations that carry some sort of criminal penalty. And these are just federal regulations.
Yes.
Not counting state laws or local ordinances or anything like that. So I think it's almost literally impossible for any individual to get through the day without breaking some law somewhere. And your argument is that this puts in the hands of district attorneys or United States attorneys a discretion to charge or not to charge. And what do we do about that? And to push it a little bit further, I think that the trial that we're seeing in New York right now with Donald Trump, we're recording this on April the 24th, the first of the many trials that he's going to be going through. This is, I think, arguably the shakiest one, because very few people get charged with this. And so this is a sort of selective prosecution, and it plays into the Trump narrative that they are going after me not because of what I've done, but because of who I am. So the question is, how do we deal with this? Well, there are safeguards in place. There's appellate review. There's the ability to complain to the bar for unethical behavior. There is voting out the district attorney. But at some point, if the problem is so systemic as that, all the safeguards in the world are not going to work. If you don't have a fundamentally virtuous society where people govern themselves and participate in the system in a similar way, in a sense of self-restraint, rather than trying to win at any cost as opposed to compromising. If the problem is that systemic, I don't know what you can do about it.
Well, just to continue on the subject, the remedies that you mentioned for this are all sort of post facto. So in the Trump situation, I've gone through this. Firstly, it's cost a huge amount of money, time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Indeed, if a miscarriage of justice has happened here, the appellate courts will presumably take care of it, but that's months in the future. So right now, the political impact of this means it's very difficult to get there.
Yes.
And if you, I don't know, can you sue someone for false imprisonment? I mean, there are things that you presumably could do, and you could vote someone out of office. But if it is a political nuance to it, where the district attorney has been elected with the idea that I'm going to clean the Augean stable of, I guess, corrupt Republican politics. I'm going to wash them out of our society. Then you can depend on me, vote for me, and et cetera. Give me some money for my campaign. That seems to be something that's out there. And I will now segue slightly. What I'm really getting at is the discretion, the laws. We're not a government of men, but of laws. But if there are thousands and thousands of laws that are and regulations that are selectively enforced depending on circumstances, that's a substantial problem. And you could go to the IRS. You could go to wherever you wanted to go. I mean, does the IRS decide to bring criminal charges, not criminal charges? Are your taxes, did you pay them? There's an argument about that. Well, we're going to do something bad to you, or we're going to audit your taxes. And how do we do that? And 1, 2, 3, and there are all kinds of discussions out there about how the system corrects error. And one thing that always strikes me is the state attorney generals. It's a political office, and you could make the case, well, all right, the district attorneys, we're going to have some special way. We keep them, we watch them and do things. Maybe we could put regulations in place. But a state attorney general is someone that's presumed, not always, but I would assume, they're using that as a springboard for some higher political office. And if you looked at, let's say, U.S. senators or people of import in the governmental affairs, many of them have gone that way. And an aggressive young politician will think, boy, I'd like to be the state attorney general. Then I can bring very lurid complaints and trials, and I can be on TV. And if I happen to be a Democrat or Republican, I will go for whatever the Democrats, maybe they'd say, well, I don't know, corruption in the automobile industry, and the Republican person might say, well, we're going to stop illegal immigrants. We have some new way. I've arrested 300 of them, and play to the political apparatus that would support the attorney general.
Well,
and so are these just systemic problems that are not solvable?
I'm not sure they're solvable. I mean, you get back to human nature here, and I'll give you some answers. I've given you these answers before, and I know you don't really like them, but they're the best answers I've got. Is that lawyers are supposed to be inculcated into a legal tradition and a concept of the fact that they wield great power and that they are supposed to be responsible in the wielding of that power. And especially in the field of criminal justice and criminal procedure. And I try to tell my students this, especially if they are police officers or prosecutors or just frontline police officers. I say that the process itself is punishment. That the Anglo-American tradition, the idea that it's better that 10 guilty men walk free than that one innocent one be prosecuted, You really need to be aware of that before you start issuing the citations and doing that. But as more and more laws pile up, and as we become a more and more polarized society, there are a lot of lawyers that are not being trained this way, or are forgetting it, or who don't care about it. I mean, ultimately, once again, you can complain to the bar if you believe an attorney is acting unethically, and I know that doesn't meet your standard, but that's available. You can vote them out. Ultimately, in a little R Republican system, the registered voter is the boss. Abolish the bar if that's, kill all the lawyers. I mean, that is within the power of the people. But I'll turn this around on you. Because I know that this has been of concern of you in the past, what devices do you have in place to absolutely guarantee that all doctors will abide by the Hippocratic Oath? It's the same sort of problem, other than the sense of commitment and self-restraint that every doctor has got, and commitment to that. Do they have that? I'll ask it.
Well, let's go in that. Maybe cultural factors can play a role to keeping people on one side of the 50-yard line or the other. And so, if the cultural factors are blurry, and it's much less effective. So I'm thinking about absence of corruption or whatever in say Scandinavian societies, where it's a very homogeneous place with traditions of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and possibly less concern to climbing the greasy pole of adulation, wealth, whatever.
Yeah. It's physically small as well.
Right, and so people know each other, and if somebody did
population
something,
small.
There'd be a lot of secondary input from societal dislike of what happened.
Yes.
And then it may be that the facts can get out there a little easier.
And I'm going to jump in here and add something, that this isn't, even though we have far more laws now and people are bumping up against each other a lot more than they were when the Constitution was written and when the common law was formed, the founders did have this concern. There was a very strong belief among the philosophers and the Enlightenment thinkers, Montesquieu, probably Rousseau, and thinkers of this ilk in the mid to late 1700s, that a republic could not be physically big, that it would not work for a variety of reasons. Too much homogeneity, too many people, too many conflicting interests, that it would turn into the kind of warfare that we are in fact seeing in this country today. And you say Scandinavia, it is still physically small. The population is relatively small. Ethnically, it's very similar. So,
well, I mean, so maybe that's just the system we have, where we have such a very diverse country, and that's the idea is diversity is good. I mean, is that good, and is that having an impact on everything? You could say, in a way, it's a triumph of the country, that it can welcome people from so many different places, and the idea is we can all get along together. It's really quite a human triumph, because it would not be a natural set of affairs. Naturally, there would be aversion and dissension, and there'd be a lot of tension with a diverse country, in my opinion.
Have we really gotten along with each other that well? I mean, we enslaved one big part of our population, we exterminated another big part of our population, and then when you got to the big Eastern Central European immigration of the late 1800s, those groups had it in for each other. So really, have we gotten along with each other as well as the typical American textbook story would have it? I'm not sure
indeed,
we have.
Good. I think that's an excellent point. Indeed, we have a lot of cultural baggage that we have to deal with. There are a lot of sin that's taken place. There are a lot of evil events have happened, and the way that we're dealing with it is fairly not totally successful. We've segued a little bit into this conversation about what's happening with the legal system, and we're saying, well, the legal system is what it is, and it's fair to say that it reflects a lot of the cultural nuances that we have in this very diverse country with 350 million people that have additional problems attached to it.
And I'll jump in again here. I don't mean to interrupt, but
No,
you just keep on giving me these
please.
great ideas.
Well, good.
But Tocqueville also, going back, this is not a problem that was unforeseen. Once again, and Tocqueville, of course, famously wrote that political questions in America are going to become legal questions because of the unique way that our political system works. And the way the Constitution works. And as you get more laws and as you get fewer resources and more interest groups scrapping over those resources, you're going to see more things taken to the legal mat, if you will, and therefore the legal process is going to get more politicized. For a lot of the reasons that you mentioned.
Well, and we have to hope that the economic arrangements in the country are good. I mean, so to me, it's personally a little spooky considering the huge national debt, the possibility of inflation, economic dislocations happening. And of course, good things can happen too. AI being one of them. I mean, there's
I'm not sure that's good, but we'll agree to disagree on that one.
Things could happen that are positive. But I mean, just getting back to the situation we have with our electoral cycle and what's happened with the former President Trump. Now, many people have strong opinions one way or the other about him. I'd like to think that we are nuanced and restrained in opinions as best we can be. But he certainly, in a way, it's kind of a strange trial in New York right now that he had supposedly a tryst with a porn star. Well, I don't know if that is, and if you're a public figure, I don't know if that's necessarily a good choice of companionship.
Well,
I mean, they might. I mean, I don't know. I mean, well, and I'll ask this question. I don't know this lady's character. I won't say more about it, but this must be a common story, common story in human affairs that powerful, wealthy men. This may sound slightly sexist. Often have arrangements with young ladies that are attracted to their power, wealth, and money, or whatever other reasons that exist. I won't mention the personal charm of former President Trump.
Thank you.
Whatever else that persuaded the tryst to occur. All right, well, that's, to start with, that's kind of a strange thing. And then the other thing that's strange, normal in a way, but still, if you're a political person, although when this happened, I don't think he'd embarked on a political career, had he? I don't know, but
I've not been following it. It's Trump burnout. So I mean, there was political contributions.
Well, nevertheless, I will now ask this question: how common is it in political circles that things like this happen, and then the political gurus say we've got to hoist this up or buy this person off? Or I mean, occasionally, I'm trying to think somebody's. Maybe this is an apocryphal story. Was it Bill Clinton's sister was spirited out, or I mean, people.
Well, the whole bimbo eruption thing. Right, well, there's another one.
Or the JFK story. Things. All kinds of cleaning take place in political circles. It is very, in my opinion, it would be extremely common for political figures to have been tainted by life's circumstances, and then their handlers or their, I guess, troopers say, well, we're going to have to do whatever. You stole some money and you were going to go to prison for that. We'll just go to the courthouse and secure the records, or your former wife has bad things to say about you. We're going to have to do something about that, or anything. And this, isn't that normal? So in a way, it was almost sort of I hate to say normal, but possibly it's not unexpected in political arrangements for some payoffs or something to happen. But the problem in this case was that, and I don't pretend to understand this, somehow that was a federal crime.
What's going on here is it's state, and it was a political contribution that was unreported and in excess of the maximum allowable. And that's all I know about it and all I care to know about it. I do think, and I'm not holding a brief for Trump here. I do not think he's presidential material. I think that he represents in many ways what's worst about the problems that we are facing now. But there is a degree of orange man bad there. That he really does drive the left berserk.
Right.
And they respond in an intemperate and politically unwise way that really plays into his narrative. So I do think the one really strong case is the classified documents case, which the judge down there is apparently dragging her feet on somewhat, and that should already have been impaneled, and it's taking a long time. This is a small thing. Many others have done it. Well, I say small, but I mean compared to murder.
It certainly it's
yes.
in political circumstances. If you're in the political bar and you're sitting there and everyone's drinking up and smoking cigars, I'm sure no one is shocked by him. Maybe there are people that are shocked, but I would imagine.
But once again, the reaction to Clinton was, all of them do this. This was a witch hunt, and the Republicans were trying to blow it out of proportion, and it was just a sexual escapade. And the Republicans say, no, this is about the chief law enforcement officer of the United States lying under. I mean, what's the narrative? January 6th, was it a riot or was it an insurrection aimed at destroying the government of the United States? So this is why I'm an historian. I want to wait for it to die down for about 100 years, and for people not to have as big a stake. I think one of the best lines I ever heard is, you're an historian if you are still to this day get really upset about the Library of Alexandria burning down.
Well, I'm so upset about it. I'm just so...
you're the soul of an historian.
No, I mean, anybody would be upset about that. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah, but there's too much of the pot's simmering too much right now. It's going to take a while to, for things to calm down and look at it with some sort of detachment.
Well, I mean, now, one other thing that's said about this is a few things. Point number one is how many powerful people get special treatment. And so I think that resonates, and I think that's common. Is that right? I mean, you'd like to imagine that's not the case, but certainly, one is the quality of the lawyer that you have. So you have a really great lawyer that costs a lot of money, that's friends with the judge. I mean, that's going to give you something that's heads up, and your powerful, intelligent lawyer is going to do everything he or she can to make the situation better for you, as opposed to somebody that's maybe is just off the street and it doesn't have the same abilities or clouts. I'd say that. Well, that's one point. The other point is that maybe it's salutary to a powerful figure that did something that's very obvious wrong, gets a nip. Maybe that's good for the country, and the word would be obvious. So something that's obvious, someone that I don't know who would be an example of that. Somebody obviously did something wrong. They took bribes. I mean, it was, let's see, a federal judge in Miami some years ago.
Hastings, yes.
Yeah. Somebody that took.
I almost literally ran into him once at his impeachment trial. He was coming out the door and I was coming in.
Right.
And then he was elected to Congress.
Right. But so I mean, you could say, well, that's good. But the timing of what's up here is supposedly the Justice Department that does not routinely bring criminal trial, put anyone in trial 6 months before the election. And this is certainly not, this is really, really having an impact on the normal electoral process for this powerful office. I mean, I think, is that a true statement?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
is.
there's no way around it, and that's why this whole thing, and take, I mean, the fact that it's Trump, the fact that it has some of the characteristics of a vendetta against him. Take your pick. The fact that he's a former president running again, that he won the electoral vote but lost the popular vote in 2016. The fact that he's now on trial. This is the sign of a politically sick society. This new movie has come out called Civil War, and they've really worked to make the movie a neutral thing. For instance, the Texans and Californians in this movie have allied with each other, which obviously is not going to happen. So they're trying to be neutral about the causes of this Civil War. They just want to emphasize the fact that we are to the point where we could envision a civil war breaking out in America, and this is what it would cost us. And one of the most, I haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to see it because I find the whole idea too disturbing, but at one point, one of the stars find themselves facing a bunch of guys with guns, and the stars say, please put down the guns, we're Americans. And the people with guns say, what kind of Americans are you?
Yeah.
And this, I find this disturbing, the idea that we take the rule of law for granted here in this country and orderly politics for granted. And I tell my students, why do you think a civil war cannot happen in this country when the biggest war we've ever fought in terms of casualties was a civil war? It happened once, it can happen again.
Well, let us pray that nothing like that happens.
And
would be, of all the awful things that could happen, that's way up there.
And the thing is, the thing that's going to stop it is a sense of virtue and self-restraint and commitment, which seem to be lacking right now. And that's the truly terrifying thing.
Well, I'm not sure what we can do about this right now.
I don't either.
I mean, what happens, you could say the process that's put these two people up to run the country, if you wanted to say that. It seems to be just a problem. Would things work better without, let's say, the primaries? Would it be better if people just, I'm not sure we get a better result. If we had closed door, would our political leaders say to themselves, this person is so flawed, even though he's popular with the voters, we're not going to put he or she in there because we don't think we're thinking about the welfare of the country. Would political leaders respond that way?
I just don't know. You need a
they
political,
used to, supposedly.
Yeah, you need a political scientist in here to talk about some devices that could emphasize the middle and de-emphasize the extremes. But our political leaders, the ones who have made it, the ones who are in Congress and governors' mansions, I'm sorry, most of them are still white male millionaires. They live in gated communities. They've got big bank accounts. A lot of those accounts are probably in Switzerland. If necessary, they could buy citizenship in New Zealand. And they do not mind using the populace to fuel their political and economic aspirations. And so that means they are pushing this kind of extremism, which is exactly what we don't need. We need the politicians who would have swung on the end of a rope if they had lost the war for independence because they'd signed the Declaration of Independence and only spent 1 or 2 months a year in political session. We don't have that anymore.
Well, I'll make a few comments. To be like that, do you have to be able to embrace your political enemies? You have to just say, you're a great person here. You've said some bad things about me, but I'm going to give you an embrace. I'll wash your feet as far as that goes. You're an American. I'll debase myself for the honor of the country, and I will. That's the way I'm going to play the game. I'm going to look at the country first, and I'll sacrifice myself, everything. I could do that. Well, I don't think that's the way the game is going. And
no.
You mentioned they're millionaires. I'm not sure how many went in as millionaires. But the question is, how do people come out?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
right now, I mean, I just look at what goes on. So, for instance, if you're in Congress or your brother-in-law is in Congress and they have information about everything. I mean, they're there. We're going to talk about, I don't know, anything. Let's say, drilling natural gas on public land. We're going to stop that. And when we know we're going to stop it. And when that happens, it's going to make the price of natural gas go up. And I can buy some futures on that and get wealthy, or my cousin can. And there's no law against that.
It's the law. There's a law against insider trading for the rest of us.
Right, but not for politicians, not for members of Congress. And the other thing that happens is people do favors while they're in Congress, and then they get payback after they leave. And the question to ask, in some countries, they have an accountant that if you've entered political office, the accountant checks your wealth, and then later, when you leave, and presumably after that, they check your wealth situation. But obviously, a tremendous amount of things are happening, and it's the government. The people think, well, you know, we don't particularly overpay our politicians. That number, I don't know what it is. It's 180,000, some number like that. Well, that sounds like a lot of money. 180,000 is a lot of money. On the other hand, you have to live in Washington, go back and forth, and the expense of, I don't know what it costs, but after you pay taxes, maybe you have, I don't know, $100,000 left, and to have an apartment in Washington, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's $50,000 a year, or some figure, like all the expenses, you eat out, you do this, you do that.
Oh, you hear stories of some first-term congressmen essentially living in their offices. So.
Right, that's correct.
But on the other hand, you know, think of the pensions afterwards. You know, think of the perks you can get. You can become a lobbyist.
Well, I think that's a pretty common story from a sociological point of view. And so the question to ask is, what kind of person should we have in there? I don't know. Is there a person that's affable and can read the voters' viewpoints very well, and then is very self-interested to the point that the public interests are diminished?
And that leads to a brinksmanship, that each side is going to push as hard as possible within the bounds of the law, hoping the other side will, you know, not retaliate. So, yeah, if you do say, all right, Buck, I'm going to give up, you know, for the good of the country, I'm going to let you have your way, the good thing for me to do would be to reciprocate. The dangerous thing would be for me to say, great, this gives me the opportunity to run the table and crush you. And so, you know, it's the same thing as with a nuclear deterrent. How do you handle that?
Well, a final question for you. I'm going to assume, rightly or wrongly, that President Trump is convicted in about 6 weeks. That's going to be, let's see, that's going to be July 1st, is that right? Or maybe around July 1st. He's convicted in New York with other trials to go forward. It's a criminal conviction. And I think there's a substantial chance of that happening, a substantial chance. Although I must say there are a couple of lawyers on the jury, only one, that it might not happen, but it's a substantial chance that it might. And I don't believe he would be acquitted, I would say that, but the trial would be hung. What happens then? What kind of, from any kind of view, a person has a criminal conviction and is facing, I don't know, 2 years in prison, and he's appealing it, and the presidential election is coming along. I mean, what does that do? I have any thoughts about that?
There's no constitutional requirement that the president not have a criminal record and not be convicted. So.
Well, what about if he's in prison? Can a person serve as president in prison?
We did have a federal judge. Who was it? Was it Claiborne or Walter Nixon? About the same time as Elsie Hastings, who was a sitting federal judge, got convicted and was in his jail cell. Now, he certainly was not judging from his jail cell, but he was drawing his federal judge's salary, and they had to impeach him and remove him for that. So perhaps, you know, that's the path.
It would have to be if he were convicted and nevertheless elected. then presumably he could try and run the country from prison, but would certainly be impeached, I would have to say.
Where are we even talking? This is, once again, the fact that we are talking about this as a possible scenario shows you how badly off we are. And if he gets convicted, roughly half the country is going to say the entire legal system of this country is illegitimate, it's been compromised. I just don't want to.
Now, I'm reminded, I'll end on this point. When the Roman Republic blew up, when it finally, with Julius Caesar was assassinated, the whole deal, how things were going, the Romans had this wonderful tradition, I could call it that, of a republic. And they'd been doing this for centuries, and the Senate was powerful, and then the Republic had turned into an empire, it had huge things, and the ability to respond to the different circumstances played itself out in the Roman Senate with the assassination of Julius Caesar. And then thereafter, the Republic still existed, but in fact, the emperors were just ran things.
Yes.
And so the socio-political change of Rome did not allow the Republic to continue. In our country, is the socio-political arrangements of our complicated country that's so different than it was 50 years ago. Can we continue to have our Republican or Democratic system? Can it survive this?
My only response to that is at the end of the Federal Convention of 1787, when the delegates came out and someone saw Benjamin Franklin and asked, well, Dr. Franklin, what have we got under this new Constitution, a monarchy or a republic? And Franklin famously answered, a republic, if you can keep it.
Okay, well, on that note, thank you once again for your clever comments. I think we started with our conversation with that. So good for you, Bob. Good to see you again. Thank you. Thanks.
This program is brought to you by the Georgia Neurosurgical Institute. For over 50 years, rendering neurosurgical care to patients of all social conditions, treating complicated problems involving the brain, spine, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, endeavoring to encourage quality care, medical research, innovation, and education on a local, national, and international basis.